The full moon silvered the ruin of the inn by the Trident where the river whispered around broken pilings and owls spoke in the rafters like priests at midnight. Arya Stark, grown lean and rangy as a stray direwolf, stood barefoot in the silted yard and breathed the night. She tasted salt from distant seas, copper from old blood, and the faintest perfume of wolfsbane crushed beneath her heel. The world itself seemed to hush and angle closer, waiting to see which name she might speak aloud and bind to death. She did not speak. Names were leaden things when spoken too soon. Instead, she flicked her wrist, and the coin of the Faceless Man spun into her palm, Valyrian steel's dull glint, dark as a raven's eye. Jaqen had once told her the metal remembered more than men ever could, every death whose blood it drank, every prayer whispered over it by someone who feared dying. Tonight it remembered Cersei of House Lannister, Lioness of the Rock and Usurper Queen. The river breeze shifted, rolling a chill off the water. Arya tucked the coin away and stepped inside the ruined inn where broken tables lay like the ribs of an animal long stripped of flesh. She crouched over a girl's corpse, weeks dead, skin waxy white beneath blue lips. A fisher's daughter, no older than 10. Around the child's wrist, someone had knotted ribbon the color of kingfisher wings as though bright cloth could ransom a life. Arya sliced it free with needle and tied it around her own wrist. A gift for the many-faced god, she thought, a debt to be collected later. Then she began her work. Skinning the dead was quiet labor. Slice here, lift there, peel gentle as a seamstress turning a garment inside out. The face came last, eyebrow and cheek, bone and tendon severed with the tip of needle until the mask drew free like silk over porcelain. When she finished, she cleaned needle in the river, left offerings for the fish, and sewed the girl's face into a salted hide pack. South, she told herself. South to the lion's den. Dawn found her on the road to Maidenpool, walking among merchants with bells sewn into their sleeves and sellswords whose shields bore no heraldry. She wore the fisher girl's face now, eyes milky, jaw narrow, and a homespun shift ragged at the hem. In sunlight the flesh felt wrong, too loose at the cheeks, but no one in the teeming crowd spared her more than a glance. The disguise was nothing special. True sorcery lay in posture and voice, the tilt of the head, the limp of an overworked knee. At dusk, crows gathered on gallows outside the town gate, black wings drumming an uneasy dirge. Arya pretended to shy away as the fisher girl would, but inside she watched the corpses sway. One wore a tattered cloak with a lion stitched in threadbare gold. A Lannister deserter, maybe? She counted that as an omen. In Maidenpool she traded small tasks for coin. Scrubbing pots in alehouses, sweeping stables, hauling buckets of sea slime from the wharf to the dung heaps beyond the walls. Each night she studied the tongues of men who had walked King's Landing streets, crooked city guards sent north to levy grain, pock-faced merchants carting Dornish wines, a washerwoman who had once boiled linens in the Red Keep cellars. Under their careless words Arya traced alleyways, postern gates, guard changes, and secret tunnels carved by smugglers in Aegon IV's reign. The older stories were better still. Cersei keeps wildfire under the throne room floor, one graybeard whispered over mulled ale. Enough to burn every Lannister alive if the Dragon Queen breaks the bay. Dragon Queen. The name stung, and Arya felt Sansa's warning echo, do not judge what you cannot see. Yet she saw the broken bodies left in Daenerys' wake when news blew north on raven wings, tens of thousands charred at King's Landing. Arya had whispered the Targaryen's name to her list, then crossed it off after Jon Snow ended the madness. Justice, or so Sansa called it. Now the realm bent knee to King Jon the Brokenhearted, whose crown weighed heavier than the wall he had once sworn to defend. Yet Queen Cersei breathed still, hidden behind mountain-thick walls in the western keep of the capital. Jon's bannermen searched, spurred by duty, and those loyal to Daenerys, spurred by vengeance. None found her. But Arya Stark of Winterfell had gifts no banner could grant. On the last day of Winter's Tale, she reached the Gold Road. Here the wind smelled of distant lemon groves and lion's breath. Refugees still drifted along the rutted verge, haunted shades of the city's final massacre. Some walked barefoot in snow-soaked straw. Others cradled urns filled with the ashes of kin. From them Arya stole stories how the Red Keep's South Tower fell under Drogon's flame, how wildfire pockets burst green along Flea Bottom's alleys. How Cersei's banners vanished as Tyrion led the unsullied up Aegon's high hill. All believed the queen dead, buried beneath the collapsed keep. But rumor is a crooked trail, Arya knew, and Cersei Lannister was a lioness who feasted on lies. Truth prowled elsewhere. She changed faces 3 times, crossing the crownlands. A plowboy's lantern jaw let her drink among Sellsword captains. Asepta's wrinkled brow earned her pilgrim's shelter in storm-ruined seps. Finally, she donned the face of a mute washerwoman. Hair straw yellow, nose sharp, lips clamped in permanent scowl. This guise tasted of lye and river mud. But it served. No one questioned a washerwoman. She reached the city at dark. Smoke lingered still, trapped in alleys like ghostly serpents. Walls glimmered with fresh whitewash where blackened stones had been quarried away. The dragon pit's shattered dome jutted like a broken tooth against the stars. At the mud gate, unsullied sentries inspected bundles, asked no questions, and waved her inside. Their eyes were milk gray under moonlight, but Arya saw weariness hidden in the rigid poise. They had fought for Daenerys, then for Jon, and now waited for the next monarch who might burn their brothers alive. Even eunuchs could feel dread. Inside, silence crushed her ears. Where once flea bottom rang with fighting cocks and whores' laughter, now only embers hissed in cook fires. The air stank of wet ash and scorched tallow. Beneath that lay the sweeter rot of unburied dead. Yet life endured. A lone luthier plucked a stringless harp for copper pennies. Children skulked in alleys chewing pine bark. A one-armed smith hammered tin spoons to replace lost silver. Small folk always endured. Arya slipped among them ghost-like, following half-remembered turns, a butcher stall, a sunken fountain depicting Aegon's conquest, the narrow stairs of Shun Alley where once she had chased a cat for cereal farl. She found the cellar door behind the tavern that had changed names half a dozen times, now called the Wailing Lion. Its sign showed a roaring lioness, body bent as though bereft of cubs. Droll. She knocked thrice, paused, and knocked twice more. A woman opened, candle in hand. She wore a dress of gray samite cut plain as a sparrow's feather, but her eyes were sharp emerald beneath a widow's veil. "Come," she said. No question. Arya obeyed. Down twisting stairs thick with spider web, they entered a chamber where 9 figures waited round a single lantern. They sat at a trestle table, each wearing a half-mask of painted wood. A hound, a lion, a weeping maiden, a skull, a kraken, a sparrow, a stag, an eagle, and a dwarf with golden curls. Arya understood at once. They were amateurs, a gutter cult-stitching mystery from scraps of rumor. Yet their eyes glittered with desperation sharpened into purpose. Washers gathered dirt, the skull mask rasped. "You have some for us?" "You seek the lioness," Arya answered, voice gravelly in the washerwoman's throat. "I have her scent." A hush. Then the dwarf mask chuckled, tinny as bells. "So do we all, child. But scent leads nowhere if the prey burrows deep." Arya laid needle across her palm. "I have steel to dig." They argued, voices hushed but fierce. Who would strike? Who would flee? What price blood carried in the new king's peace? Some feared Jon's wrath. Others craved it. When silence returned, the stag mask spoke. "What is your name, girl?" "I am no one," Arya lied. "Then no one shall be Queenslayer." The stag raised a vial of queer red glass. "Drink. Bind yourself to us in blood." Arya tilted her head. "Poison? A debt?" She took the vial, uncorked it, and tasted. Bitter, metallic, essence of nightshade diluted in sweet plum. Enough to kill a child, not a wolf. She drank. "Good," said the sparrow mask. "The dying begins now." 5 nights later, Arya's disguise changed again. She took the face of a Myrish courtesan rumored to have died mid-thrust in a silk pavilion during Prince Oberyn's wedding games. Pale amber eyes, mouth cruel and soft, cheekbones cut sharp as glass. She dressed in a gown dyed sunburst orange with a window so daring across the bosom that sailors stumbled at the sight. Beneath it she wrapped a bodice of supple boiled leather, thin enough to pass as whalebone yet strong enough to turn a dagger. From a hidden garret near the Blackwater Rush, she watched Lannister spies rove, poorly disguised as septons selling indulgences or urchins seeking bread. They milled around the ruins of the Red Keep, delivering coded reports to black-clad ravens perched on the unfallen East Tower. A secret order clung still to Cersei's memory. Or perhaps to Cersei herself. Arya tracked them, mapping routes in dust on attic floors, which gatehouses they passed, which torchlit halls beneath the keep they favored. A pattern emerged like frost on glass. Late each dusk, 2 spies vanished into a tanner's abandoned storefront inside the Hill of Rainies and emerged at dawn smelling faintly of sea brine. A tunnel to the caverns, Arya guessed, carved by smugglers or traitorous stonemasons. It likely snaked beneath the city wall to the mouth of the Blackwater, where a half-sunk barge might ferry secrets upriver to Lannisport. Or to Casterly Rock. She followed one night. Cloaked in courtesan finery, dagger strapped beneath silken thigh, she slid unseen behind the spies and traced their steps down mildew-slick stairs. Moss glowed ghostly green where torchlight flickered. Far below, water lapped against stone in a cavern large as the September stone. A single lantern floated atop a punt crewed by a dwarf with golden curls. Not Tyrion, the hair was straw stuffed into a bronze skullcap, but the message was clear. "Is she safe?" one spy whispered. "Safer than any queen in the realm," the false dwarf replied. "But she hungers for red vengeance." Arya felt the words settle like snow on her shoulders. Alive then, hiding in the black belly of the city, waiting. She returned to her Watchers' fellowship and laid out a plan. They would strike the hidden barge at ebb tide, smoke the smugglers from their hole, storm the queen's refuge before her lion guard rallied. The Sparrow Mask wept at the violence. The Kraken laughed. The Hound sharpened steel. All vowed death or glory. But long before the hour came, Arya slipped away. She owed these gutter conspirators nothing. If they died chasing ghosts, clearing her path of witnesses. The many-faced god cared not for wasted prayers. 2 nights later, she became a queen's handmaiden. The face this time she did not peel from a corpse, she memorized it from gossip. The girl Kitten, once one of Littlefinger's brothel maids, rumored to be favored by Cersei for her honey hair and flatter-ground mind. Arya found Kitten working a gambling den in a burned-out bathhouse near Cobbler Square. A coin in the right purse paid for Kitten's company. A pinch of essence of nightshade in her arbor red sent the girl to painless sleep, and a hidden blade to the heart made that sleep eternal. Arya washed the blood with lime and vinegar, flayed the face, and walked into the world as Kitten reborn. The disguise cost her something. Kitten's cheeks were round, her step buoyant, her voice laced with simpers Arya loathed. But Cersei's spies noticed. Within a day, a hooded man pressed a letter into her hand. Golden wax, lion seal. Inside, copperplate script. The queen calls her kittens home. Come by moon's third watch. No signature. No need. The rendezvous took place in the crypt beneath the great September's ruins. Holy ground desecrated by dragonfire and green flame. Marble floors were slick with soot. Charred statues of the Seven lay in fragments. In the center knelt Queen Cersei herself, unmistakable even in plain gray cloak. Her hair, once a shimmering golden mane, had grown back unkempt, curling about her jaw like a lioness roused from winter sleep. Green eyes glowed feral beneath torchlit vaulting. Arya felt the instant tug of old hatred. The list burned on her tongue for years. But she did not strike. Steel in haste often dulled revenge. Kitten. Cersei's voice cracked like dry parchment yet held iron. Come. Arya stepped closer, head bowed in proper deference, heart pounding. The 2 spies she had followed earlier flanked the queen, armored in mismatched plate scavenged from fallen Lannister guards. Beyond them stood a towering silhouette. Ser Gregor Clegane reborn, face hidden beneath helm black as pitch. The mountain's bulk filled half the chamber. Even undead, he reeked of clotted blood. Cersei touched Arya's cheek, nails digging crescent moons. You were always loyal, she murmured. When the viper struck, when the city burned, you did not flee like the rest. Arya forced Kitten's breathless awe. I would never leave you, my queen. Good. Cersei's smile carved grief into cruelty. Then you shall help me reclaim my throne. She explained, voice low, weaving vengeance into gold thread, a secret feast to lure the small council, poisoned arbor wine, wildfire caches stashed under the hand's solar. The city would kneel once more, feet blistered by green flame. And my sweet brother, she said, savoring the sour taste, will choke on my mercy before he dies. Arya listened, weighing pathways. She had come to kill, not to save King's Landing from renewed fire, yet Jon, Sansa, Bran, the North flame spared none. Duty and vengeance warred like sword and shield inside her chest. I live to serve, she whispered. Cersei clasped her hands. Then serve tonight. A rival has infiltrated my ranks, a woman with a face like sunshine and shadows. Find her. Deliver her to Ser Gregor. Sunshine and shadows, Arya realized with a jolt that Cersei spoke of the Myrish courtesan guise. The queen hunted Arya Stark even as Arya crept under her nose. Gallows humor tugged at Arya's lips. As you command. Cersei released her. Go now. Return before the moon leaves the sky. Arya bowed low, retreating with measured grace. At the stairwell she paused and glanced back. Cersei knelt again before a cracked statue of the mother, whispering prayers. The mountain stood silent as a mausoleum, swords sheathed across his broad back. Soon, Arya vowed. But not here. The crypt was too open, the mountain too near. Better strike when the queen lay abed, alone, unguarded save for beliefs in gods who no longer listened. She tracked the queen's movements through the night. Meetings in secret cellars, coded ravens dispatched from the half-collapsed rookery, a clandestine audience with a black-cloaked cell's word who claimed to carry wildfire charges smuggled from the Alchemists' Guild. Cersei trusted few, killed many. Her paranoia bred convenience, countless dead men do not gossip. An hour past midnight, Arya followed Cersei into a hidden passage behind a weeping stone saint in the sept's eastern transept. The air smelled of cedar and resin, a place cleansed with incense, perhaps a private oratory. Arya padded silent, footsteps muffled by prayer rugs scorched along their edges. Ahead, torch fire flickered beyond an archway. Arya pressed her back to cold stone and peered. Cersei stood before an altar of polished obsidian upon which rested a single goblet of deep red wine. The queen raised it to trembling lips. "To my father," she toasted. "May his shadow guide my sword." She drank. Arya felt it then, a tremor through the stone, deep as breaking ice. Wildfire? No, this was smaller, intimate. Poison. The goblet clattered from Cersei's grasp. She staggered, hands clawing the altar for purchase. "You," she croaked, eyes searching shadows. "You traitor." Arya stepped from concealment, the washerwoman's scowl dissolving into her own face as she peeled away Kitten's borrowed skin. Beneath lay Arya Stark, the last face Cersei would ever see. "Valimorgulus," Arya whispered. "All men must die." Cersei swayed, green eyes wide with horrified recognition. "Stark," she hissed. Spittle foamed pink. "Little wolf." Arya advanced, needle glinting. Little but not harmless. Cersei reached for a dagger hidden in her sleeve, but her fingers spasmed and dropped the blade. She sank to one knee, poison working swift, severing muscle from mind. "My son," she gasped. "My children." "They're waiting," Arya said. She pressed needle's point to Cersei's throat where pulse hammered frantic. "Say hello for me." She drove the sword smooth and sure beneath the jaw, up through soft palate, into the brain. Cersei's convulsion stilled, her eyes froze, lips parted on half-formed curse. A thin line of blood trickled down the blade, warm as summer wine. Arya held Cersei until the queen's weight turned slack, then eased her to the floor. Silence reigned but for the guttering torch. She wiped needle on Cersei's cloak and knelt in thought. Killing the queen was only half the task. The mountain remained. Loyalists remained. Wildfire caches maybe. To protect the innocent, she must free King's Landing from this last sickness. She must become Cersei Lannister in truth. Slowly she drew her daggers and began flaying. Cersei's face peeled with medical precision, sinew parting like fruit skin under sharp steel. When finished, Arya washed the mask in sacramental wine that pooled near the altar. She pressed the damp flesh to her own and breathed in. Cool tingling spread over her features as the skin set, sealing with a whisper. She stood, now Cersei, pale gold hairbrushing shoulders, gown of plain gray turning regal in posture alone. She practiced the queen's sneer, the arrogant tilt of chin. It felt disturbingly natural. In the alcove she found a silver voice chain, healthy emerald ring, and a lion-headed clasp. She adorned herself. From a chest she claimed a crimson mantle sewn with golden thread. The transformation was complete. When she stepped back into the crypt corridor, torchlight kissed her new face and did not flinch. She summoned the mountain with clipped command. Footsteps like falling towers echoed and the giant loomed. "My queen," he murmured in voice like stone dragged. Arya savored the thrill of power. "Ser Gregor," she said, testing Cersei's silk and steel tone. "We ride for the Red Keep. It is past time." The city bent knee. The mountain bowed. "As you say." She led him upward through secret stairwells smelling of dust and old blood, each step measured, regal. When they emerged into the dawn-gray courtyard, horns sounded along the walls, alarms raised by spies discovering corpses below. Arya sensed chaos blooming like spring wildfire. Perfect cover. In the confusion, few looked twice at the queen striding toward the throne hill, undead knight in tow. Those who did bowed or scurried aside. Arya felt their fear flow around her like a river parted by stone. She wielded Cersei's visage as both sword and shield. Within the half-ruined Red Keep, she found remnants of the Lion Guard rallying. She claimed command with a gile. "Re-round up the conspirators in the sept," she ordered. "But let none break steel till I give word." Her new voice rang with such authority they obeyed without question. Next she dismissed the mountain to guard the outer gate, safe distance. Alone, she stalked inner chambers, hunting wildfire caches whispered in conspirators' tales. In the Hant's tower, she discovered barrels of pale green glass, each marking identical to those Tyrion had described during Blackwater. Enough to shatter half the city if flames reached them. Arya dragged each cask to the moat walkway overlooking the river, stacked them high, and set fuse to slow-burn pitch. As she retreated across the bridge, dawn lit the sky pink. She pictured Jon's smile when he learned the last wildfire was gone. Flame met glass in a roar that shook the keep, sending emerald fireflies whirling over the Blackwater, leaving only hiss and smoke-licking charred stone. Debris rained into the frothing river. No more wildfire. No more queen. Her task complete, Arya shed Cersei's face in the cool shadows of an armory. She burned the mask with a candle stub. Skin curling, hair crumbling to ash. The queen's visage consumed by orange tongues. Thus ended Cersei Lannister twice over. Arya Stark stepped from the keep in simple leathers, a weather-stained cloak thrown over her shoulders, needle at her hip. She felt lighter, though blood still flecked her hands. She walked unnoticed past soldiers shouting orders, past small folk peering from doorways, past the mountains still guarding a gate for a mistress who no longer existed. Outside the city, dawn was breaking in earnest, sky gilded like forge-hot steel. Arya turned north, boots crunching frost-stiff grass, journeying toward brothers and sisters and a home rebuilt from war's ashes. She did not look back. There was no need. The queen was dead, the wildfire quenched, and the many-faced god had his due. Yet in the hush between heartbeat and breath, Arya felt a whisper of wind curl round her ear, Valido Heiress. All men must serve. She smiled, a small, fierce thing, and strode on, ready for the next face the world might need her to wear. The air north of King's Landing carried the briny weight of the Blackwater for 3 nights' ride, then thinned into pine-scented clarity as the King's Road climbed gentle ridges toward the neck of the realm. Arya felt the shift in her lungs the way a wolf feels the tilt of earth beneath its pads, the bitter smoke of the city blown away behind her, replaced by sap and half-melted snow and the faint musk of deer in winter coats. She traveled alone, as she always had since leaving Braavos, but solitude never felt so starkly quiet as now after wearing Cersei's screams inside her head. Each dawn she woke in the lee of stone mileposts or hollow oaks, kicked quenching soil onto the dwindling embers of her campfire, and started forward with needle tucked through her belt and the empty leather pack that once held Cersei's face lying limp at her hip. She could not bring herself to burn that scrap of tanned flesh in the wildfire's roar. Instead, she had flung it into the Blackwater seconds before the barrels burst, trusting current and flame to finish what her dagger began. Even so, sometimes when twilight slid purple across the sky, she fancied she smelled perfumed oils, a ghost scent lingering in folds of her cloak. On the 5th morning, she reached the burned shell of Sow's Horn, a hamlet whose thatch and wattle had been devoured during the dragon's siege. Only a well remained standing, its stone lip blackened. Chickens scratched in ash and blew feathers like pale petals across char. Arya drew a bucket, the rope rasping, and drank deep. The cold struck her teeth, sharp as needles, but the taste was pure. A boy emerged from the skeleton of a barn, perhaps 9, hair like straw dust, holding a broken spear half his height. He watched her drink, wary as a fox. "You're going north," he said, voice thin. She let the bucket hang and wiped her mouth with her sleeve. "Aye. Ghosts walk that road. Queen's men hung 50 of us on cedar poles." The spear shivered in his small hand. "Say the dead don't stay put." Arya thought of her own list, the dead she carried, the dead who carried her. Some ghosts do what they must before they rest. She knelt, reaching into a pouch for the ribbon of kingfisher blue she had taken from the fisher girl long ago. Here, a ward against bad spirits. She tied it around the splintered haft, double knotted. The boy's eyes widened, reverent. "Thank you, milady," he breathed, though she had said no name. When she walked on, she felt his gaze press her back like morning sun. The road narrowed where old oaks, half-scorched, leaned together overhead, their interlaced limbs a cathedral of char and green. Snowmelt dripped from tips, pattering like soft applause on the packed dirt. Arya moved at a pace Sirio Farrell would have called water dancer's stride, light, relentless, efficient. Yet her mind swirled heavier than her feet. She kept turning Cersei's final bewildered glare over and over, testing whether the heat of triumph remained. It did not. The victory felt cold, hollow as the queen's empty skull beneath the collapsed sept. Was vengeance ever otherwise? She wondered. She remembered the feel of Marentrant's throat giving under her blade, the coppery steam of Walder Frey's blood across her fingers, the gurgle from Polliver when she reclaimed Needle. Satisfaction, yes, but fleeting as drag-a-flame on stone. Every death left her hungrier than before, chasing a quarry that shrank the closer she came until only memory remained and she could not eat that. She slept poorly. Dreams wound knots in darkness. She stood in the hall of faces where every column bore Cersei's golden visage. They all spoke at once in shrill accusation, and the whispers turned to wildfire green smoke that filled her lungs. When she woke, heartbeat drumming in her ears, dawn's first blue was sliding across the world like a sword unsheathed. She wished for Nymeria's distant mind to brush hers, the dream bond that sometimes came when moonlight was thin, but silence answered. Wolves lived their own stories. By the 7th day she reached Harrenhal's blasted crown. The lake mirrored its jagged towers where dragonfire had once scorched stone soft as wax. No banners flew above the battlements, only wind prowled the ramparts, howling through arrow slits like a wounded giant. Travelers made wide arcs around its moat, fearing spiteful ghosts. Arya, whose childhood blood had soaked that soil twice over, guided her gelding. Bought nameless from a nervous hedge knight outside Maidenpool along the narrower eastern causeway. Inside, moss and ivy strangled courtyards where the mountain's men once nailed women to boards. She found the godwood pond choked with leaves. A weirwood stump rose from murk, its sap-red tears had dried. Arya knelt before it, the chill of damp earth seeping into her knees. She sank needle point first into the mud before her, a tiny banner of northern steel, and closed her eyes. I have taken many faces, she whispered, but this is mine. Arya of Winterfell, daughter of Stark. She bowed her head until her brow brushed Needle's hill. Words flowed like river water, names of friends long dead, Hot Pie, Gendry, Yoren, Lamigri hands. Names of enemies she had slain. Names of those she could not save. She unrolled them all, letting the silence swallow each syllable. The gods give only silence in return, but sometimes that was enough to clean a wound. When she rose, an arrow thunked into rotted plank inches from her boot. She wheeled 3 riders sat astride gaunt horses in the courtyard arch, half-armored in mismatched plate. Their leader's helm bore crooked stag antlers hacked short as if he'd lost a wager. Harrenhal levies tolls now, he called, knocking another arrow. His beard twisted in greasy black ropes. 5 silver stags by safe passage. Arya met his gaze, lifted her empty palms. I've no coin that weight. Then boys will weigh your pretty sword. His smile bared broken teeth. And anything else they fancy. She gripped Needle. I'll give you one chance to turn your horses. Laughter echoed. The antlered man spurred forward, arrow taut. Behind him the others unsheathed swords. Arya counted breath. 1, 2, on 3 she moved, dropping into the water dancer's stance, Sirio Farrell drilled into her bones. She slashed Needle across the gelding's reins, startling her mount sideways, the arrow loosed into empty air. A pivot, a lunge, Needle's point found the rider's armpit seam where mail parted. He shrieked, toppled. The second man swung wide with a bastard sword. Arya ducked, rolled, slashed his calf. He howled, stumbled. The third thrusted clumsily from horseback. She slipped past, hamstrung the horse. Beast and man crashed in tangling limbs. Dust drifted. 3 groans mingled with the lonely creak of scorched timbers. Arya cleaned Needle on the antlered cloak, whispered, Vala Morgulis. She rifled pockets, found 2 silver stags, enough to pay the godwood for its silence. She tossed them into the pond where they vanished with muted plunks. Tolls paid. The neck greeted her with clammy fog that rose off ghostgrass marshes. Cranigman huts perched on reed stilts, smoke curled from peat fires. Arya bought passage on a flat-bottomed skiff from a woman whose face wrinkled like old leather and whose arrows gleamed black with fish oil. The woman poled through labyrinthine waterways, crooning wordless tunes that echoed over bulrushes. Dead things sink quick here, she said once, meeting Arya's eyes. Best let the mud keep its peace. I've no quarrel with the mud, Arya answered. They glided beneath willows whose drooping branches fingered the water like pale hands. When they reached firmer ground near Moat Caelan's moss-eaten towers, Arya disembarked, leaving behind a pouch of coin and the fisher girl's rusted coin of the Faceless Men. The Cranigwoman turned it over, her gaze sharpening, then tucked it beneath her jerkin without a word. The ruined gatehouse still bore scorch marks from the Iron-born siege years before. The road north unfurled beyond, damp, pitted, but unmistakably home. Arya inhaled. Almost there, she told Needle. On a frosty dawn-tinged rose, she beheld Winterfell's rebuilt ramparts rising through drifting snow flurries. New timbers intermingled with ancient stone, a patchwork of loss and resurrection. Smoke swirled from chimneys, ravens wheeled above Maester's rookery. The gates stood open, though guards in dire wolf livery flanked them. One called challenge, Arya lifted a palm. "Arya Stark," she said simply. Recognition flitted across his face like startled deer. He bowed her through. Inside, the courtyard bustled, blacksmiths beating iron, stable hands brushing shaggy northern ponies, washerwomen lugging steaming baskets. It smelled of boiled wool and horse sweat and fresh-cut pine logs. For a heartbeat, Arya feared she would vanish like melting snow, her years of faces shucking away until nothing but a scrawny tomboy remained. Then a booming voice shattered her thoughts. "Arya?" Rickon Stark, no longer the wild boy she remembered, but a broad-shouldered youth with shaggy hair, bounded down stone steps 2 at a time and crushed her in a bear hug that rattled her ribs. She laughed, muffled against his fur-lined cloak. "You got tall. And you got dangerous." He held her at arm's length, grin splitting his face. "Sansa's in council, she'll faint from relief." "Starks don't faint," Arya said. "Then she'll scold you instead." He shoved her playfully. "Come, before she marches out herself." They passed through archways newly carved with intertwining dire wolves and weirwood branches. In the great hall, Sansa set the high-backed chair beneath banners of grey dire wolf on white. To her right stood Brienne of Tarth in polished plate, and to her left Maester Wolkan with scroll in hand. Men and women of the north filled benches, lords of Barrowton, Carhold, Deepwood Motte. Sansa's voice carried calm authority as she discussed grain tithes. The hall quieted when Arya entered. Sansa rose slow, disbelief melting into shining joy. She descended the dais, the sisters met halfway. "You came home?" Sansa breathed, cupping Arya's face. Arya pushed strands of snowdamp hair behind her ear. "For good this time, I think." Sansa's gaze flicked to Needle, then back. Understanding dawned, she knew some dark weight had been laid down. She hugged Arya tight, formal dignity forgotten. The nobles looked on in fond approval, Brienne's stern mouth twitched upward. When Sansa retook her seat, she beckoned Arya to stand before the dais. "My sister has traveled far and served the north beyond any call of duty," she proclaimed. "Let it be known that Arya Stark has returned and will help guard this realm." A murmur of assent rolled through the benches like distant thunder. That night a feast was called, venison pies larded crisp, loaves stuffed with crumbly goat cheese, honeyed parsnips, flagons of spiced ale. Arya picked at her trencher, stomach shrunk from weeks of trail fare. She watched delighted children chase dire wolf pups in circles near hearthfires newly stoked. She listened to old songs of the north. "The last of my giants," "Farewell to Bear Island," and her heart swelled until tears stung her lids. Jon was absent. Raven said he rode the wall again, sentinel of the wild. Bran, king beyond, wandered the green in dream. But home was here, Sansa's measured smile, Rickon's hound-shout laughter, the steady hush of God with leaves outside frost-rimmed windows. Arya slept that night in her childhood quarters under blankets that smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. She dreamed not of faces but of running with wolves beneath an aurora of dancing green fire. She woke smiling. Winterfell's peace lasted 3 weeks before the first storm blew in the form of news. The mountain had broken his leash. Word reached by breathless crow from King's Landing, a hulking knight in black swung a mace through the dungeons, smashing walls till daylight streamed. He cut down half the lion guard and vanished into the Kingswood. Small folk spoke of a demon in giant's armor, dead yet thirsting. Arya listened to the maester's recitation in the solar where Sansa met with her council. A hush settled when he finished, each mind seemed to turn slowly, hearing the echo of hooves in distant woods. "The mountain was sworn to Cersei," Sansa said at last. "With her dead he has no master." "No master but blood," Brienne murmured, frowning. "And he has much to spill." Rickon clenched fists on the table. "If he heads north, we remember his butcheries at Harrenhal." Arya closed her eyes. She saw again the mountain's colossal silhouette in the crypt, waiting for orders from a queen that was now ashes. She had left that beast caged, believing the city's politics would chain him long enough for rot to claim what little remained of his mortal shell. She had underestimated the darkness mere flesh could not hold. "He comes for me," she said quietly. Heads turned. Cersei vowed vengeance on any who ruined her plot. The mountain is vengeance. Arya exhaled slow. "I will not have Winterfell bled for my mistake." Sansa leaned forward. "It was no mistake. You saved thousands by ending Cersei. But we must meet this threat. I'll ride south." "No," Rickon snapped, voice raw. "You just got home. Home must stand." Arya rose. "I know his ways. I'll cut him from the world. Brienne studied her, blue eyes weighing duty. Not alone. Arya met that gaze, recognizing unyielding honor. A small party moves swift. The mountain leaves a trail wide as a river. We can catch him. Sansa's expression tightened with fear she would not voice. At last she nodded. I'll send you with 5 of the best rangers and Hullen's daughter Alice. She's tracked giants beyond the wall. Arya tilted her head in thanks. Take ghost hounds, Rickon added. He stepped close, lowering his voice. Bring me the beast's helm when you're done. She clasped his forearm. You'll have it. Preparation swift, dried meat, rye bread, seal oil torches, spare bows. Arya slipped on boiled leather brigandine lent by the winter town armorer, light enough not to slow her dance. Over it a jerkin embroidered with a gray dire wolf, Stark colors for the first time since childhood. She buckled needle at her hip and a Bravosi stiletto inside her left boot. Around her neck she hung the coin of the Faceless Men, its promise still unspent. At dawn she rode from the west gate beside Alice Hullen, 3 Winterfell rangers and 2 ghost hounds whose pale eyes gleamed like morning stars. Hoarfrost filmed the ground. Sansa watched from the battlements, cloaks snapping in a rising breeze, until they vanished among whitening trees. The mountain's path proved easy to follow, charred farmsteads where doors hung splintered, crushed cattle unburied, wheel ruts churned deeper than any wagon. Scorch marks, Alice observed, crouching by a blackened cedar. He drags wildfire barrels? His mace, Arya corrected. Friction sparks when ironstone teeth scrape flint. She'd seen it in dungeons. Fire chasing each brutal swing. 3 days out they found survivors, a family of millers huddled beneath a mossy overhang. The father's arm dangled twisted, the mother's eyes stared blank as snow. Their eldest son, perhaps 12, told a tale of a giant knight demanding bread and then slaughtering their mule when the flour sacks were empty. He'd laughed, the boy said, but the sound was like rocks grinding in a mill. Where did he ride? Arya asked gently. West, the boy whispered. Toward the Red Lake. The Red Lake, seat of House Crane, gentlefolk known for red wine vineyards. If the mountain reached such fertile lands he could feast on carnage for months. Arya thanked the boy, bound the father's arm with splints, and left a ghost hound to guard them until kin from a nearby holdfast could guide them. She whispered to the hound in low Valyrian, it licked her hand and sat sentinel. The woods thickened into a cathedral of ancient oaks gnarled gray. Mist coiled like ghosts between trunks. They rode single file, hooves muffled by damp leaf fall. Arya slipped into the skin of bygone selves, the cat of the canals, the blind beggar, the washerwoman kitten. From each she borrowed a trick, how to breathe without sound, how to hear echoes in humidity, how to smell fresh blood on bark. After sunset she crouched by campfires so low they were embers mapping paths into embouched valleys. On the 6th dusk Alice signaled halt, raising 2 fingers. The rangers spread, bows ready. Arya crept forward. The air carried acrid tang of burned hair. She saw a glade torn open, trees felled in a spiral, trunks split by enormous force. At the center, a churned pit of mud dotted with chunks of horse flesh. Buzzing flies thickened. Footprints the size of barrels led northwest. He sleeps little, Alice murmured, towing an imprint deeper than her shin. Pushes hard. Rage has no need for rest, Arya answered. She touched the rind of the print, still wet. We're close. They followed under a moon thin as a sickle. Ghost light glimmered on sword edges. Wind keened through branches like distant screams. At midnight growls echoed. A wolf pack pacing parallel unseen. The ghost hounds whined but held discipline. Beyond the next ridge, red lamplight flickered through trunks. The party dismounted, tethering horses to low boughs, and approached on foot. They peered from behind boulders. In a shallow hollow the mountain had gutted a wayside sept, its stone image of the father. Toppled. Wild boar carcass roasted on an improvised spit. Sparks shot as the knight's mace rasped against whetstone. He sharpened with deliberate strokes, helm beside him. The fire danced across milk-white flesh stretched waxen over a skull unburdened by lips or nose, Qyburn's handiwork. His eyes, rimmed black, never blinked. Near the fire, 2 figures crouched in chains, surviving lion guard perhaps, pressed into reluctant squires. They trembled. The mountain glanced their way and they flinched though he gave no order. It was enough to taste their fear. Arya exhaled slow. Remembered Syrio, the heart lies between the hard parts. She measured distance, torch flare, angles of approach. Circle left, she mouthed to Alice. The ranger nodded, arrow knocked. The other rangers ghosted through brush, positioning for crossfire. But fate cracked a twig. A stag startled, leaping from underbrush. The mountain's head snapped toward the sound, toward Arya. He rose, mace in fist, armor creaking like ship timbers. His eyes fixed on her face through darkness. Recognition? Or merely prescience? She stepped forward, blade gleaming. "Gregor Clegane," she called, voice steady. He rumbled, a sound deeper than any word. Firelight painted him demon red. The Lion Guard captives scrambled aside, chains clattering. Arya advanced. He charged, earth trembling under each stride. She darted left, felt wind of mace swing roar past. The weapon smashed a boulder to gravel. An arrow thudded into his pauldron, another glanced off his thigh. He ignored both. Alice loosed again, arrow buried in armpit seam, black blood seeping. The mountain roared, wrenched it out, flung it aside. Arya feinted close, slashed behind knee. Needle bit rubbery tendon, not deep enough. He kicked, boot the weight of anvils catching her shoulder. Pain flared white, she rolled, gasping, sprang upright. Two rangers rushed, spears aimed at groin gaps. The mountain grabbed one shaft, yanked its owner forward, and crushed skull with gauntlet. The body dropped boneless. 3 heartbeats, 1 life ended. Rage rose like wildfire in Arya's chest. She slipped into the water dancer's flow, weaving between mace swings that shattered tree trunks. Each pass she struck, inside left elbow, slash across ribs where leather straps overlapped, thrust into soft flesh join above hip. Black ichor bubbled, but the monster lumbered on, relentless. "Eyes," she shouted. Alice climbed low branch and leapt onto the mountain's back, dagger flashing downward. He reared, grabbed her hair, tore her free, flung her, she struck a stump, lay still. Arya darted close, drove needle through visor slit into one eye. Steel met gristle, then resistance. She twisted. The knight bellowed, swinging blindly, mace ripping through bush. Needle snapped at midway, half-blade buried in socket. Stunned, Arya stumbled, blood pounding her ears. The mountain lurched, keening in muffled fury. Another ranger loosed quarrel straight into open visor, the bolt lodged deep. The giant sagged to one knee. Ghost hounds seized the moment, lunging, their jaws gnashed at exposed throat. He crushed one in fist, but the other clamped tight, tearing sinew. Black blood gushed steaming. He swatted the hound aside, but strength ebbed. Arya gathered breath, sprang onto his lowered thigh, clawed up breastplate, drew her stiletto. She found the gap at base of helm, under chin, and shoved upward till hilt struck steel. Warm rot stench billowed, innards long dead. She sliced side to side, severing what remained of neck muscles. The mountain convulsed, swayed, collapsed backward with a thunderous crash that shook leaves from trees. Silence fell, broken only by crackle of fire. Arya knelt on chest, rising no more. She pressed fingertips to pulseless throat and whispered Valamorgulus. The surviving ranger staggered, bleeding from ear. Alice dragged herself upright, ribs likely cracked but alive. They stared at the corpse as if expecting it to rise again. Arya climbed down, wiped blade on singed cloak. "Burn him," she said. "Scatter the ashes." They gathered firewood, drenched it in oil from panniers, and lit the pyre. Flames roared sky-high, devouring monstrosity and nightmare both. The stink made their eyes water. Dawn broke crimson gold through treetops. Arya stood watch till embers cooled gray, a ghost hound limping at her side. She cut a strip of the mountain's blackened helm and slid it into her pouch for Rickon. Winterfell rejoiced at their return. Bells rung, ravens released, huff fires fed honeyed cedar. Sansa met Arya in the godwood beneath the heart tree, bleeding sap through fresh snow. They spoke little, grief for fallen rangers mingled with relief. Arya laid the helm shard at Rickon's feet. He swallowed hard, eyes bright. Nights lengthened into true winter. Arya settled into rhythms she had forgotten. Dawn archery with Rickon on frost-whitened ranges, sparring in the yard against Brienne's measured strength, evenings by hearth with Sansa, map between them, planning patrols and harvest stores. She mended cloaks, read maester tales of Nymeria's voyage, taught recruit girls the Bravosi sidestep. Slowly the restless itch beneath her skin quieted. Yet some evenings she wandered the battlements alone, face lifted to cold stars, listening for the call of distant wolves. She felt the world stretching beyond stone walls, south to the Trident, east to Bravos, west to far salt seas where sailors spoke of lands uncharted. The coin of the Faceless Men rested in her palm often, she traced its grooves, wondering whose face it might yet buy. One night as snowflakes spiraled thick, she found Sansa upon the rampart watching aurora curtains ripple green across black sky. The wind tugged their cloaks like playful pups. Arya leaned on the parapet. "Peace suits you," Sansa murmured. "I'm learning." "Do you ever miss the road?" Arya shrugged. "Sometimes, but home is worth staying for." She touched the stone, cool and solid. "And there will always be roads when I need them." They fell silent, sisters shoulder to shoulder. snow dusting their hair. In the distance a dire wolf howled. Perhaps Ghost come south with Jon. Perhaps Nymeria prowling riverlands. The sound threaded the night, neither lonely nor longing, simply alive. Arya closed her eyes, breathing frost-sharp air, and felt the echo in her own chest. Alive at last. Wolves are meant to roam, but even roving hearts know when the forest around them is their own. She would walk other paths again, of that she had no doubt, but for now the north held her and she led it. Above, the aurora flared brighter, as if the old gods painted the sky in celebration of returning daughters. Arya opened her eyes, smiled at the wild lights, and whispered a vow heard only by swirling snow: to serve what I love, and to love what I serve. The lights danced on, silent witnesses to the promise, and Winterfell slept secure beneath their glow. Snow thickened across the north until the world seemed forged from white steel and the hard black bones of forests. In Winterfell's courtyards every hoofprint iced over before returning boots could mar it. Every breath curled from mailed throats in drifting banners that snapped away on spears of wind. Fires hissed beneath kettle drums of sleet, and the castle itself creaked like an old hull at sea. Yet within those timbered walls life glowed: feasts, swordplay, quarrels, reconciliations, little constellations of warmth defying the silent dark. Arya Stark found herself restless again as midwinter set its teeth. She drilled recruits at dawn, raced the ghost hounds along the ring wall at noon, and sparred with Brienne until their wooden blades shredded into frayed bristles. Every night she visited the godwood, pressing a palm to the heart tree's frozen bark to remind herself that stillness did not mean stagnation. Even sap slept to gather strength. But some evenings needle-sharp memories pricked her: black water lapping the Braavosi docks, the clamor of Pentoshi markets, the hush inside the House of Black and White where death sang in so many dialects. Wanderlust itched under her skin. The itch grew when ravens arrived bearing uneasy news. At first only scattered words. Ire-born reavers sighted off Flint Cliffs, a trading cog from White Harbor vanished near the Fever Isles, torch fires glimpsed upon uninhabited Skagos beaches. Then fuller reports: the Wolf's Den docks found peppered with reeking heads dipped in tar, each wearing a gilded eye patch of hammered tin. The message was plain as shark's teeth: Euron crows I had not drowned with his silence in the Blackwater, as rumor insisted. He had healed, hidden, and hatched new storms. Rickon slammed a fist upon the map table when the scrolls were read. 15 raiding ships inside 3 fortnights? The Bay of Seals is ours, no kraken sprouts there without help. His voice cracked, still perched between boy and lord. Maester Wolkin shifted parchment stacks. Reports claim smaller craft, my lord. Sloops, not true longships. Scouts, perhaps? A wolf does not fear pups, Rickon snapped, but worry pinched his eyes. Sansa's calm prevailed. Whatever their numbers, they test our coast. If we ignore, they will test again, harder. Her gaze passed to Arya, and in that flicker Arya read both invitation and warning. Later, alone on the battlements, Sansa leaned on the ice-slick Merlin. You want to chase them, she said. Arya, hood drawn, watched clouds race ghost-white across a violet moon. If Euron lives, he's collecting secrets. He craves dread, he'll strike something dear before spring melts the ice. The north is dear. So is salt to his kind. Arya's breath crystallized. Let me scout. I know stealth better than any captain's spyglass. Jon would say the walls need you more. Arya's lips twitched. Jon would say do what must be done and don't be stupid about it. Precisely. Sansa studied her. Promise me you won't be stupid. I promise to be fairly clever. Not enough? Sansa sighed. But I knew the answer when I asked. She tugged free a slim velvet pouch. Inside nestled a ring wrought as 2 dire wolves chasing tails around a frost opal. Our father had it commissioned after you were born. He meant to give it when you came of age. It never found you. Arya ran a thumb over silver fur ridges. I'm still not ladylike. Nor the realm. Wear it anyway. If Ironborn catch you, they'll weigh ransom double for a Stark heir. Triple for a wolf who bites. Arya slid the ring onto her smallest finger. It fit snug, a band of cool resolve. She clasped Sansa's forearm. Her sister met her halfway, no tears this time, only iron understanding. Preparations unfolded swift and secret. Alice Hullen, her ribs mended to stubborn ache, volunteered first. 3 more rangers joined, veterans who had tracked White Walker remnants beyond Eastwatch. They packed smoked eel, seal fat, dry oat cakes, coil ropes, and the grapnel claws Alice forged from mountain boar tusks. No banners, no trumpets, only quiet resolve. They rode at dusk through swirling snow spores, ghost hounds padding ahead. By moonrise they'd crossed the White Knife's ice-crusted bridge and plunged into pine labyrinth where branches clattered like brittle wind chimes. Through glades of silver birch they followed fox prints until dawn glimmered. When the trees thinned, the shivering sea revealed itself, a flat slate rimed with broken flows. Faint on the horizon, masts pricked the sky like splinters of night, a scatter of small ships hove to, sails reefed, dark as seals against pewter water. Alice glassed them from a dune ridge, breath-fuming. 6 hulls. Maybe 8 beyond haze. Not crew enough for war. Enough for knives and dark, Arya murmured. She pointed farther north where basalt cliffs knelt into surf. Crevasse Cove their hidden landing for scouts. We slipped by land. They tethered horses in scrub and slogged across permafrost, skirts of white grit blowing up in eddies. Hounds ranged ahead, vanishing in pale gusts. As sun climbed pale disk behind gauzy veils, they spied a narrow cleft splitting cliff face, tidewater surging in rhythmic heaves. Smoke whirled from within, faint and blue. We wait for ebb, Arya said. They crouched among rock spires until water drew back, exposing slick pebbles. One by one they dared the gap, boots skidding. Inside, the sea cave expanded into vaulted gloom lit by braziers guttering pitch. Peeling nets, rack of rusted hooks, upturned wine barrels, and outposts still rough. Iron-born voices echoed from depths, singing some guttural tune of drowning gods. Arya beckoned. Rangers melted into shadowed stalls, knocking arrow and knife. She walked forward alone, steps soft, scenting tar and rotten fish. 9 raiders huddled near a brazier, armored in barnacle-flecked stud leather. One gaunt, scalp tattooed with spiral kraken, slurped stew from a cracked helm. Another strummed a driftwood lute strung with twisted gut. They laughed at verses, delighting in the screams of milk cow maidens. She counted heartbeats, remembered accents from her time as cup girl for Roose Bolton's Ironborn minions. She let her posture sag, shoulders rolling with salt brawler looseness, then strolled into the brazier light. Oi, left the piss watch for mangy dogs, did ye? Save some broth, my belly's knocking louder than yours. Tattoo scalp blinked, stew dribbling. Who the reek are you? Girl who knifed 3 pigs on the silence, earned her place. Her Bravosi tongue slipped into harsh pike vowels. Captain Quellen said fetch his share, lest he fillet your peckers. She jerked a thumb toward tunnel mouth. They traded looks scented with suspicion and ale. One rose, crossbow half-cocked. Quellen sails south tonight. He left no word for cave rats. Arya scratched her jaw, flashing wolf-ring beneath frayed cuff so quick it looked accidental. Greed lit their eyes. Tattoo scalp grinned. Well, tits on a trout, loot's loot. What's that silver band worth to kings? More than your smell, sea slug. She stepped closer. Lemmy warm bones. She extended hands toward brazier. Fingers brushed stew kettle, she flicked boiling broth into Tattoo Scalp's face. He screamed. In same breath she drew the ice steel dirk from wrist sheath, buried it under his chin. Chaos erupted. Arrows hissed from shadow, Alice and rangers struck 2 men through throat and eye. A third lunged at Arya with hatchet, she sidestepped, hamstrung him, kicked him into fire. The lute player swung instrument like cudgel, she caught it on dagger hilt, wrenched, splintered wood across his nose, and opened his belly before he toppled. The skirmish ended in 20 heartbeats. Steam rose from blood on cold stone. Alice wiped blade on raider cloak. Hells, that song's done. They searched bodies, claiming a tide chart scrawled upon eelskin, a ruby thumbring bearing kraken sigil, and a sealed message tube. Inside, a strip of inked canvas reading, "The dutiful daughter weeps where winds are silent." Coded nonsense or coordinates for spies. Arya folded it, storing with the chart. Then her gaze found something else, a faded page torn from Maester's ledger, listing Winterfell patrol schedules. Stark secrets. 1 traitor at least. We burn this roost, she said. Oil casks smashed, torches flung, flames crawled nets. They fled before smoke-filled cave, paddling stolen coracle through surge. On the water they heard muffled booms, barrels igniting. Rocked by waves but unseen from anchored sloops beyond fog veil. Under dusk's bruised clouds they hauled ashore south of White Harbor, stashing the coracle amid reeds. Their Alice decoded tide chart with star compass. Marks lead west to Bear Island then bend to Pike itself. She tapped the eelskin. He's funneling scouts along lonely coves, string of pearls to home shoals. Arya traced line. Euron resetting net over each island, fishing for information, captives, maybe relics. We cut pearls, we choke net. Night thickened. They camped in ruined watchtower where Nestor Royce once kept garrison. Arya perched on parapet, knees hugged, staring at blank horizon broken only by shimmer of aurora. Thoughts drifted to Theon Greyjoy, how guilt had carved him hollow, how courage at last had sealed him hero. She wondered if his soul floated in halls of drowned god or Wolf's weirwood. Could spirits quarrel over one heart? Snowflakes settled on shag of her hair. She closed eyes, slipping into wolf dream. Through Nymeria's senses she skimmed above forest, 1,000 scents. Hare, elk, crow, the musk of man hiding under spruce. Not man, Ironborn scout. Nymeria stalked. Arya felt hunger, thrill, the kill pounce, snap of spine, warm gush of life. She jerked awake, breath ragged. Dawn rosy. She led the rangers to that spruce. Blood-confirmed dream. They followed boot prints to ravine where 4 more scouts huddled at cookfire. Arrows ended them. Among spoils, another cryptic strip, the Storm Bride sings by the wolf's door. Patterns, daughter, bride. Storm, wind, wolf. Messages to Euron's codemaster? Arya collected each. Days lengthened into steady hunt. They struck covert after covert, always one step ahead of Ironborn couriers. On lonely lights unpeopled sandspit they ambushed a smuggler's skiff carrying chests of dragoglass daggers black as blindness. On Skagos they teamed with cannibal clans, a fragile pact sealed over shared seal meat. To topple an Ironborn signal tower and push prisoners into the surf. Each victory small, each risk higher. Word spread on winter wind, the wolf girl walks waves. Ironborn lookouts started lighting 3 beacons instead of 1, then fleeing its shadows. Fear served as blade. Yet true storm brewed unseen. On a bitter gray noon as their party quick marched through frost-crusted heather near Sealskin Point, a war horn sounded offshore, deep, monstrous. They scrambled up screed a cliff ledge. There, battering the sea, loomed a leviathan. Not a lean longship, a black-hulled fortress studded with iron-shod rams, Euron's Silence Reborn, or its darker twin, sails dyed night, deck crowded with spear shapes. Squadrons of smaller ships escorted her like sharks riding a whale's maw. Arya's heart hammered. He's come himself. Smoke rolled from the flagship's prow, signal for landing. Hundreds of raiders would flood villages within hours. White Harbor vulnerable, Winterfell within marching days if rivers iced. She tasted iron fear and excitement. One thrust could sever Kraken head. Options? Alice asked. Sink that monster before anchor, Arya said. Ballistia at Dun Fort, a ranger offered. But crew small, bolts few. We'd never load enough time. Arya scanned cliff, jagged teeth, basalt overhangs. Surging sea smashed foam 20 yards below. She considered tide, rope, wind. A plan wild as wyvern flight unfurled in her mind. Follow me, she said. They raced inland half a mile to abandoned quarry where miners once hacked stone for Karstark keeps. Amid rubble lay rusted sprockets and 2 cylindrical crane weights as tall as men, hollow iron shells. They dragged one, grunting, upon sled of split pine back to cliff edge. Ghost hounds notched ropes through crane weights eye holes, forming spiderweb harness. Rangers laced additional line, 100 feet of hemp plate spliced with rawhide. They tied other end to trunk of wind-stunted ash. As silence approached, wolves parted rope into coiled loops hidden beneath dried kelp. Arya waited at cliff lip, cloak snapping, frigid spray salting her cheeks. She envisioned Euron upon quarterdeck, smiling that shark smile, certain no wolf arrow could pierce his steel-scaled hull. When hull cleaved directly below, crew swarming to drop longboats, Arya gave signal. Rangers shoved W. 8 off cliff. Plummeted, gathering speed. Hemp hissed after. The iron cylinder struck deck with seismic crunch, punching through planks into hold. Seconds later rope yanked taut. Ash trunk shuddering but holding. Cliff became anchor. Silence lurched. Momentum arrested. Prow slewing seaward. Masts groaned. Rigging snapped like harp strings. A roar rose from deck. Arya had already leapt. With ice pitons strapped to boots and gloved hands wrapped in boiling pitch for grip, she slid down taut rope, careening toward listing flagship. Wind whipped hair horizontal. She slammed onto sway brace yardarm, vaulted to deck amid chaos. Raider nearest reeled, eyes big as moons. She gutted him, freed his war axe mid-drop. Storm of bodies converged. She danced, hacking rope ties, slicing throats. Deck canted. Sailors lost footing. Barrels rolled. Below, the iron weight punched through lower hull again, water flooding. A horn blast, Euron himself emerged near aft castle stairs. Taller than memory, clad in crimson-scaled armor studded with mirror shards, black patch embroidered with spiral sigils. He laughed, voice carrying like Gallows Creek. Little wolf, come to drown? Arya advanced, flipping dirk to reverse grip. Wolves tread water better than crows. He drew twin Iraq curved cutlasses forged of blue dusk steel, spoils from some summer isle slaughter, and whirled them with showman flair. Dance then. Their blades met with shriek of sparks. He swung wide, she parried, slid inside, jabbed for armpit. He twisted, clipped her shoulder with flat. Pain sang. She rolled below his second blade, slashed thigh. Blood welled black. He cackled delight, smelling steel joy. All my gifts find me, he crooned. Dragon Queen, Krakenthane, now Winter Bitch. I will peel your face and wear it to feast. Arya remembered faces. Hatred steadied her hand. They circled on tilting deck, water now knee-deep where iron weight wedged. Sailors scrambled for skiffs but collapsed under arrows from rangers who repelled behind her. Ghosthounds bounded across gangplank, white teeth flashing. Euron lunged, Arya sidestepped, catching his wrist with wolf-ring-adorned hand, silver teeth gouged flesh. He snarled, headbutted, stars burst across her vision. She staggered, he pressed, sweeping low cut to hamstring. She vaulted a rolling barrel, his blade hewed at ale-spraying froth. She landed near capstan, seized broken spear, haft parried downward slash. Wood splintered, but bought breath. Deck groaned louder, ship settling. Sea poured through rents, swallowing corpses. Arya feinted left, hurled spear shaft like javelin, it smashed Euron's brow, cracking patch strap. He flinched, she sprinted, planted boot on broken rail, rebounded, and drove dirk at his exposed eye. He jerked aside, but blade sliced cheek to nose root. Scream cut salt air. He backhanded, catching her ribs, armor dented, breath whooshed. She sprawled, water sluicing icy shock through leathers. He stalked, blood pouring down, mask of fury. I will feed you to my drowned god inch by inch. As he raised twin swords for coup, Ghosthound lunged, clamping his sword wrist. He roared, shaking it off, but moment faltered. Arya surged upward, burying dirk deep into his groin seam where armor scaled parted. She twisted, yanked, hot crimson pumped. Euron sagged, snarling exotic curses. She rose, seized his patch strap, and whispered, Vala Morgulus. Then she shoved him back. He toppled over rail into freezing chop. Heavy plate dragged him under. Water swallowed his howl. Silence's deck bucked, a shuddering death sigh. Rangers shouted, Abandon! Arya cut a length of coil, lashed to railing stripped bare. She slung offside with ghosthounds into longboat already loaded with her comrades. They rowed hard as flagship's midsection snapped, masts tumbling like felled trees. A roar of trapped air and water erupted. Silence folded, dragging escorts caught in murring lines. Foam geysered high, raining icy shards. When violence stilled, only wreckage bobbed, splintered planks, violet sail scraps, drowned men. No sign of Crow's Eye. Arya stared at black water until certain he would not burst out again. The sea swallowed secrets well. They towed longboat toward White Harbor, oars biting slush. Dock bells rang as they approached. A harbor master had spied sinking ships. Small folk lined icy quays, cheering when ghosthounds leapt ashore, shaking spray. Fisher children craned to touch damp wolves, calling them snow spirits. Arya, soaked to bone, met the cheers with tight smile, heart still drumming. In Mander Men-at-Arms Hall, she spread captured code strips before House Manderly's maester. When aligned, they formed map overlay of northern coastals, stars marking each keep. Lines converged on a sigil scribble, not pike, but deepwood motte. Euron meant land spear through unguarded flank of north while diversions gnawed coast. A final gamble foiled. Ravens raced to Winterfell. Sansa's reply reached on third dawn. North sings your deeds. Return swift. They rode home along river frozen like glass. Flags of Aurora rippling overhead. At Winterfell gates, horns blared. Rickon awaited with pale grin, brandishing the red kraken ring and patch Arya salvaged. Proof enough, he crowed, slamming them onto spike above gatehouse where ruined flayedman banner once fluttered. Cheers shook ramparts. That night feast tables groaned heavier than ever. Roasted ibex, trout glazed in birch syrup, oat-crusted plum tarts. Mead flowed amber. Sansa led toast. To the wolves who hunt where tides flee, and to sisters who carve krakens from winter seas. Horns clashed tables. Arya flushed under applause, uncomfortable as always with spotlight, but allowed herself small grin when Rickon draped a sea-washed blue mantle across her shoulders, embroidered with silver kraken impaled by dire wolf fang. Later, in Godwood hush, Arya knelt by Hearttree as snow fell like sifted flour. She whispered names of fallen rangers, pouring a skin of ale over roots for their spirits. She pressed Bloody Kraken Patch into Bark Hollow. "See yours," she murmured, "Landars." Footsteps crunched. She turned to see Jon Snow, a hair shot through with silver, cloak of Night's Watch black edged stark white. Raven Arrival had summoned him south. He studied her with quiet pride. "Heard you sank a legend." "Legends bleed same as pigs," she said, rising. Jon chuckled. "Good to learn before they mount you on stained glass." He met her gaze. "Ready to rest?" Arya looked toward castle lights, toward wide world beyond. The itch remained, but softer. For now. She hooked an arm through his. Together they walked beneath rustling boughs aglow with lanterns, two wolves homeward. Winter matured, then began its slow, reluctant retreat. Meltwater rivers sang under ice. Crocus buds speared drifts. In those months, Arya found newer rhythms. Training a cadre of messenger girls to ride swift as hawks. Forging silencers for crossbow grooves. Teaching Rickon Bravosi footwork until his laughter echoed across Bailey. She sparred with Jon mornings. The ring of steel forging sibling trust deeper than blood alone. On quiet afternoons, she joined Sansa in Solar, feet propped, sharing lemon cakes while debating trade caravans and coast watchtowers. She learned that governing could be another form of blade dance, parries of coin, ripostes of mercy. But rest was never stillness. Spies whispered of rebellions in reach led by starving peasants claiming right to crown grain. Of a Sellsword queen across narrow sea rallying exiles under banner of pale fox. Rumors like snowflakes, each harmless yet hinting a storm. Arya felt world's pulse quickening again and wondered which beat would summon her next. One dawn she woke from wolf dream with fresh claw marks across soul. Nymeria's pack had scented strangers near Riverlands. A column of gilded wagons tiled in green glass, bearing sigils unknown. Danger, curiosity, both. Arya sat on edge of bed, heartbeat matching distant paw thumps. She slid Wolfring off and placed it upon polished ashwood box Sansa gifted, beside dirk and folded cloak. Sign that she intended to return. She penned brief note, "Gone south to learn if the rivers run clear. Do not fret. Leave porch light. A." She left it on Sansa's desk, pressed under a sprig of winter rose. In yard she saddled lean courser, quick and sure-footed. Brienne intercepted, arching brow. "Another quest? Questions require roads," Arya replied. "Answers require friends." Brienne handed her small steel whistle. "One blast, I come." Arya pocketed it. She mounted, stroked horse's mane. Gates groaned open. Dawn's spill painted snowfields gold. She nudged heel, and the courser burst into canter, spraying powder. Behind, Winterfell's banners snapped crisp, each gust carrying scent of pine pitch and hearth smoke to accompany her. She rode with little more than bedroll, water skin, pouch of silver stags, an endless horizon before her. Past last river fords where otters slapped tails, through ruins of Barrowton's bone-parted barrows, across green shoots sprouting on fields once trampled by war. Everywhere small folk waved, calling blessings, for the wolf girl's tales preceded her like sunrise. She nodded, but kept stride. Glory rusts, deeds fade. Only motion remains. On third dusk, she reached crossroads in where the trident's whisper first ushered her toward vengeance years ago. Now river hummed with new verse. She tethered horse, entered main hall lit by beeswax and stocked barrels. Familiar scarred barmaid poured dark ale. No one recognized the traveler in plain gray cloak. At corner table, she drew scroll of freshly charted lands. She dipped quill, sketched course south by Maidenpool, then west along Blackwater once more, this time not for slaughter, but for answers. She tapped parchment, considering which face to wear among riverlords who remembered her father's honor and which mask to drop when time to act. A raven croaked outside shutter. She glanced up, smiled slightly. Roads awaited. Storms too, perhaps. She drained ale, rose, and walked into night bright with winter stars, her shadow long and lithe across frosted cobbles. Far away, somewhere beyond hills, wolves howled welcome. She lifted 2 fingers to moon in silent salute and slipped into darkness, the many-faced god's coin light in one pocket and Ned Stark's memory steady in her chest, guiding each footfall forward. The night at the crossroads inn stretched long, silvered by a thinning moon that drifted like a pale eye above the whispering reeds. Within the common room, the low hum of travelers blended with the hiss of the hearth. Tankards clinked, dice fell. A lute murmured half-forgotten ballads. Arya sat alone on a bench pushed back from the candle glow, hood shadowing her face, fingertips tracing idle paths across the map she had inked in Wolf's Den. The green glass route that began somewhere east of Maidenpool wound past Harrenhal's broken towers and vanished into the misty marshes where the trident split and wandered. She listened more than she drank. Every voice carried a fragment. A hedge knight cursing new tolls at the Blue Fork, a riverman grumbling about wagons glittering like the gods had pissed emeralds, a washerwoman who swore she saw a fox-tailed banner in the glare of torchlight before dawn. Piece by piece, the caravan she hunted took shape. Ornate wagons paneled in blown glass, wheels iron-rimmed and silent, guards wearing cloaks dyed the color of crushed mint leaves. They moved at dusk, stopped at ruined septries or abandoned manors, paying in Lycene coin so old the faces were rubbed smooth. A roar of laughter burst from a cluster of sellswords near the bar. A broad man with a scar like forked lightning across his scalp was describing how the Fox Queen rewarded faithful service with cups of arbor gold and kisses sweet as Myra's shade. The man held up 2 fingers, waggling them suggestively. His companions guffawed. Arya noted the fox epithet confirmation. She slid from her bench, drifted closer, adopted a slouching gait and the swaggering smile of a smallfolk bravo. When the scarred man turned for fresh ale, she jostled him, spilled a slosh across his vambrace, muttered apologies in a slurred Stormlander drawl, and palmed the parchment that protruded from his belt pouch with a deft twist of wrist. He cursed good-naturedly and waved her off. Moments later she was outside, the parchment unfurled beneath the scrawny lantern hanging over the stable door. It showed a sigil, silver fox rampant on field of jade, beneath which was written in careful Braavosi glyphs, delivery to be made at nightfall, Harrenhal East Yard, 2 nights hence. Payment sealed. No witnesses. Braavosi letters for Braavosi eyes, she mused, coin traveled far. She had time. Harrenhal lay 2 days' ride south if one feared neither frost nor bandit. She feared neither. By dawn she had purchased a spare horse from a drover half asleep in straw, left 3 coins and no name, and was cantering along the crisp King's Road, hooves ringing on frozen ruts that glimmered like poured glass. The world was sharpening, a winter retreating but not yet conquered, sap rising but ice still ruling shadows. Crows knelt on fence posts and regarded her with oily eyes. Once she spotted a lone dire wolf track shadowing her own, deeper, broader. Nymeria, perhaps, pacing unseen among the bare birches. Toward noon she overtook a ragged company of Septons walking southward, robes patched, feet bandaged, singing the mother's hymn in wavering harmony. Their leader, a stooped man whose nose was split by frostbite, thrust a begging bowl at her stirrup. Arya reined in, dropped a copper, and asked if they had passed wagons of green glass. The old Septon nodded warily. "Aye, child, like something from a Dornish fable, 12 carts glowing against the dusk." They did not slow for blessing. He crossed himself. "What they carry, 7 guard us." Arya thanked him and rode on, heart-thumping faster. That night she made camp beneath the shattered ribs of an ancient aqueduct south of the Blue Fork. Moonlight slipped through arches like silver ribbons, striping the frost. She fed her gelding a mash of oats and pine needles, then crouched by a fist-sized fire no brighter than a coal. Over the embers she studied the parchment again. Nightfall, it said. She guessed the time, an hour or 2 after moonset when even owls doze. East Yard, she remembered the crumbling courtyard between Harrenhal's Tower of Dread and Widow's Hearth, where moss-slick flagstones bowed like hag's teeth. Perfect for clandestine exchange. High walls, 1 gate, exits through a vault that led, if the tales held true, to secret steps plunging into dry wells beneath. Wind hissed through the aqueduct, and with it came the scent of horse sweat, leather, and cold steel. Arya pressed palm to ground. Faint vibrations, riders. She doused her ember with a handful of snow, slipped into shadow behind a fallen column. A file of men emerged from the north trail, 5, perhaps 6, cloaks swirling. Their helms bore the green glass fox picked out in silver thread. They passed without pause, hooves muffled in snow dust. Scouts. The caravan was close. Arya waited until their hoofbeats melted into distance, then saddled quickly and followed at a patient remove. By dawn Harrenhal's jagged silhouette clawed the horizon, half-veiled in pale mist rising from its marshy moat. Crows circled the broken towers, reeds rattled under a breeze carrying the smell of stagnant water and char. Arya tethered her horse in a thicket west of the gatehouse, disguised herself in a squire's jerkin smeared with ash, darkened her cheeks with soot, and slipped through a breach in the curtain wall. Inside, weeds had flourished in snow-sheltered crevices and frost-decorated shattered buttresses with shining lace. The east yard lay quiet, no torches, no guards, save for one novelty, a line of green glass lanterns suspended on fine brass chain from window arch to stable door, dim light glowing like bottled sea. The sight chilled and thrilled her. She counted 12 lanterns, one for each wagon. She explored, step by silent step, ears tuned for clink of bridles, scrape of boot. Near Widow's hearth she ducked through a blasted stairwell and descended into the vault. A cavernous hall whose ceiling was scored with soot from Aegon's dragonfire centuries earlier. The floor pooled with icy water, pillars stood like scorched giants. Voices drifted, hushed, accented with the lilting purr of Lys, the harsher burr of the reach. Arya crept until she saw them, 2 figures kneeling before a crate taller than a man, its sides lacquered emerald and etched with sigils none of the 7 kingdoms claimed. One figure was a woman garbed in voluminous cloak of fox fur, crimson curls spilling, face veiled by a half-mask of hammered silver shaped like a snout. The other, a wiry Braavosi alchemist, wore gloves blackened from long hours over crucibles. They pried the crate, revealing rows of stoppered glass orbs the size of goose eggs, each swirling with murky green fire. Wildfire, refined, portable, more deadly than cask or cauldron. Arya's stomach clenched. "This batch is pure," the alchemist whispered. "It ignites on breath alone." "Good," the fox lady replied, her voice smooth as sanded cedar. "The throne will notice flame long before it hears the North's pleas." She laughed softly, sharp edges muffled in velvet. "By dawn 3 days hence, the trident will burn from Harrenhal to salt pans. The wolves will take blame, the reach will rise, and all shall bow to the—" Something shifted. The alchemist froze, peering into gloom. Arya steadied breath, held still, a shadow among shadows. A rat skittered across flooded stone. The fox lady resumed. "Shall bow to the storm bride," she finished. Arya filed away the title. She retreated, mind racing. 3 days until mass arson. Blame on North. War reborn. She considered sabotage. Shatter the orbs, ignite wildfire now, incinerate plotters, but risk engulfing Harrenhal and innocent squatters in ruin. No, better to strike the head, steel proof, carry warning to Winterfell and King's Landing both. She unslung her pack, fished out tools. A slender glasscutter's blade, lockpicks, a vial of dream wine. Time to borrow a face. At dusk she stalked the encampment where wagon drivers lounged about cook fires, sipping warm ale. She singled out a driver with wiry beard and sleepy eyes, drugged his drink while regaling him with gossip of whorehouses reopened in Maidenpool, and guided his staggering form behind a collapsed granary. A swift garrote ended his snore, a surgeon's knife freed his face. Arya pressed the mask to her own, willed her muscles to the driver's lax grin, his sleepy gait. She donned his leather coat, his gloves tucked needle inside boot. Under the wagon tarps she found uniforms, green cloaks stitched with fox, a ledger listing routes, a polished bronze whistle shaped like vulpine fang. All taken. Night slithered into the yard. Lanterns flickered brighter, summoning the caravan to order. The fox lady emerged, mask gleaming, flanked by 2 Sellsword captains. Drivers mounted benches. Guards tightened saddle girths. 12 wagons rolled over rutted stones toward the south postern. Arya guided the 10th, muscles memorizing the driver's languid slouch. She counted breaths, pockets of darkness, potential escape cuts to the tether rope that bound wagons together. Past the gatehouse, they entered the King's Garden, now a ruin of thawing briar and broken statuary where a thin plume of mist hovered over swampy pools. Here the fox lady raised a fist, the column halted. She addressed her captains in low tones. "We crossed the trident by the ford at Cockle. Went. Set fires upstream to distract scouts. None lived to bear tales. Orders repeated, torches doused, wheels creaked forward again. Opportunity, the ford would scatter drivers, confusion of water, night, and fear. Arya's mind mapped strategy. She palmed a strip of braided horsehair soaked in lampwick oil, slow fuse favored by Braavosi saboteurs. She twisted 2 strands around the rear axle of the wagon ahead, masking motion under cloak sweep. A spark from Flintstone brushed wick, faint smoke coiled, unseen. At the river crossing, muddy banks sloped shallow, wheels churned water. The oil fuse ignited axle grease with muffled whump. Wagon 12's wheel exploded, spoke splintering. Horses screamed, rearing. Guards cursed, plunging knee-deep to steady beasts. The column snarled, halted. Fox Lady rode back, fury flashing in sienna eyes behind mask. "Fix this now." Arya slipped from her seat, splashed to rear wagon, ostensibly to aid, in truth to infiltrate. Under tarp lay another crate of wildfire. Iron lock quick-picked. She removed one orb, swaddled it in damp sackcloth, slipped it into satchel. Evidence secured. Next, sabotage remaining cargo. She uncorked vial of vinegar stolen from camp kitchen, dripped it across straw bedding. Vinegar did little to wildfire, but combined with pitch resin lining crate would erode stopper seals. Within hours, fumes would saturate wood, rendering orbs unstable, prone to detonation at jar. With luck, they'd ignite during march far from towns. "Driver!" a guard barked. Arya resealed crate, climbed out. Wheels mended. Back aboard. She obeyed, balancing satchel. River ford cleared. Wagons lurched onto southern bank. Dawn's faint blush hovered. She needed escape before sun sharpened eyes. Thickets flanked the trail. Arya spurred her team sideways, feigning loss of control. Horses bucked, plunging into reeds. She leapt, rolled, vanished into underbrush, ditching cloak to sever suspicion. Within breaths she crouched in mud, watched column shrink between cedars. A shout rose, someone found the missing driver's bench empty. Blades glimmered, but light failed. Reed swallowed her scent. Soon hoofbeats faded. She slogged through marsh until safe distance, then angled northeast toward a hunter's track leading to Duskendale, the satchel clutched tight. At midday she paused in a birch grove, peeled driver's face, buried it beneath roots. Her own skin tingled as if freed from cobweb silk. She cleaned grime, donned plain jerkin, checked orb, still stable. 2 nights of hard riding carried her to the encampment of House Mouton outside Maidenpool's walls. Lord William Mouton, though ragged after years of war, held loyalty to the North and King John. Arya revealed ring and sealed letter she had drafted describing plot, signed with Stark Dire Wolf and her code of the Faceless Coin. Mouton accepted evidence with grim resolve, dispatched ravens to Winterfell and the King's Landing Council. The wildfire orb he placed in lead-lined coffer under triple guard. But news returned faster than ravens could fly. Flames already danced along the banks near salt pans. The caravan crates, destabilized by vinegar and jostle, had erupted during encampment, setting carts ablaze. Reports told of fox banners consumed alongside mercenaries, few survivors. Yet the Fox Lady lived, seen riding a black courser toward the sisters, mask cracked but eyes burning. She was now ghost and martyr both, rumor weapon stronger than wildfire. Blame still pointed north. Sel's words claimed a Stark girl infiltrated caravan and cursed it with witchcraft. Some river lords muttered. Arya felt the snare tighten, victory tarnished by shadow of guilt. She could clear that shadow only by hunting the Fox Lady to ground. She traveled east to the coast, hired a fishing cog willing to brave winter currents to the Three Sisters. Gulls wheeled above brackish surf, salt winds sang of shipwrecks. 3 islands rose bleak from Slate Sea, Sweet Sister, Long Sister, Skull Sister. Smugglers, wreckers, escaped thralls, they all found shelter here. On Sweet Sister's muddy quay, Arya disembarked beneath a sky-streaked coral and violet, fish stink thick in throat. She adopted guise of deckhand seeking wage, ears pricked for word of a red-haired woman with silver mask. It came sooner than hoped. In a smoke-choked tavern called the Net and Needle she overheard 2 pirates squabbling over emerald shards sharp as a whore's promise, scavenged from lagon debris and sold to a Lady Silva of Skullsister. Known locally as the Storm Bride for her habit of sailing out during tempests to speak to waves. Storm Bride, the title Arya had heard. Fox Lady and Storm Bride were the same. She crossed to Skull Sister on a moonless night, bribed a kelp gatherer for passage. Waves hammered black cliffs. Foam burst white as bone fragments. A lonely keep crowned the highest point. A squat tower of weathered basalt girdled by broken buttresses that resembled flayed sails. Lantern light winked in one upper window. Arya scaled a goat path slick with sea spray, took shelter behind wind-torn thorn bushes. Guards patrolled, but few. The island's isolation was defense enough. She waited until pre-dawn hush, when even gulls slept. Then she moved, cat silent along inner wall, up drain pipe crusted with salt crystals. a cross parapet crusted with guano. A skylight yawned open to the upper hall. She dangled, dropped soundlessly onto woven rush matting. Corridor torch sputtered. She padded toward Heart of Keep, guided by faint strains of music. Lyre strings plucked in mournful cadence. She found the Storm Bride alone in a study lined with nautical charts anchored by shells. Mask removed, red curls unbound, she gazed into bronze mirror flickering with candlelight. In reflection, she saw Arya before Arya fully entered. Her eyes widened not in surprise but recognition, as though she'd expected a final act. "You walk softer than tide," she said, voice husky. "Were you always the wolf I smelled by Harrenhal?" Arya stepped inside, door whispering shut. "Names matter less than deeds. Then let deeds speak." Silva, if that was her birth name, rose. She wore midnight blue robes embroidered with storm clouds and foxes twining. "You ruined a masterpiece. Do you know how many alchemists died perfecting breathlit wildfire? How many spies bartered souls to plant northern schedules in Maester's pigeon coats? All ash." She sounded more weary than wrathful. "It would have burned farmers, children." Arya's hand brushed hilt. "Why?" Silva smiled, a crescent of sorrow. "Because fear is the coin of kings. Your brother sits a brittle throne. Break his alliances, he falls, war resumes, and chaos births new crowns." She approached, palm out, between fingers rested a tiny vial of wildfire, stopper sealed in silver. "We both kill, girl. I build pyres to remake the world. You carve faces to guard your own. Which of us is braver? Let's find out." Arya drew needle. Silva's wrist flicked, vial arced toward stone hearth. Arya Dove caught it mid-flight. The motion exposed her ribs. Silva lunged with stiletto from robe sleeve. Arya twisted, blade scraping leather, felt sting on flank. She rolled, kicked Silva's knee. The woman toppled against the chart table, compass needles scattering. Arya bounded upright, jabbed. Silva parried with dagger pommel, danced back, one knee bending awkwardly. "Enough," Silva hissed, chest heaving. "If I die, others rise. Storm Bride is tide, not rock. Then tide ends here." Arya advanced in the water dancer's whisper step, tap, glide, thrust. Needle slipped through Silva's guard and kissed flesh below clavicle. Warm blood-spotted robe. Silva exhaled, surprised. She sank, back propped against wall of shells. The dagger slipped from fingers. Arya knelt. "Give me names, plans. I may spare you." Silva laughed softly. "Spare? You wear mercy like wolf wears lace." She coughed blood. "But listen, your battles are pebbles. Across the sea a fox crowns a dragon of glass. Winters melt, summers freeze. Prepare." Life drained. Eyes glazed. Arya pressed two fingers to pulse, silent. She closed eyelids. Vala Morgulus. From shelves she gathered ledgers. Lists of sympathizers in the Reach. Codes linking pirate lords. Copies of ravens bound for covert cells across Westeros. Proof enough. She sifted through desk drawers, found only trinkets. Shards of emerald glass shaped into tears. A child's doll with ribbons. A weathered seashell painted direwolf gray. She pocketed the doll, the incongruity a mystery for later, and left. She burned the keep. Oil casks stacked near kitchens fed flame through corridors. As she climbed outer stair, fire roared behind, licking windows. On parapet she set the wildfire vial on stone, shattered it with pommel. Emerald light bloomed, devouring ashes already rising. She stood in glow, wind whipping hair, then descended goat path while tower crumbled. Back on Sweet Sister Quay, she secured passage north aboard a grain dromond bound for White Harbor. Storm clouds bruised horizon. Sail unfurled. Salt wind billowed. She leaned on rail, watching Skull Sister recede. A pillar of black smoke staining dawn. In pockets rustled ledgers, codes, dull. Evidence for Sansa, warning for Jon, puzzle for herself. Voyage took 3 days. She wrote nightly by lamplight, summaries, cipher keys, all sealed with direwolf stamp. She trained with ship's ropes, sparred with bosuns belaying pins, taught cabin boy the Bravosi salute. At last White Harbor's pale granite came into view, lighthouse beacon swinging its steady eye. On dock Sansa awaited. She had ridden hard with escort after Raven told of Sultan's fire. Relief softened her shoulders when Arya stepped ashore, though eyes tightened at bandaged flank. They embraced without words. In Manderley's solar, Arya spilled documents across oak table. Maesters bent a copy, lords muttered. the wolf pack tightened. A council convened in Winterfell weeks later, lords of North, envoys of Vale, even emissary from Dorne draped in orange silk. Arya stood beside Sansa as maps unrolled, alliances forged, watchtowers funded along rivers, harbor garrisons reinforced. The Fox conspiracy unraveled, but seeds of doubt bloomed, vigilance became law. After, on parapet above Thawing Moat, Arya and Sansa watched Aurora skirts swirl. Sansa spoke first. "Do you ever tire?" Arya smiled faint. "Tire, yes. Stop, no. What drives you now?" "A doll," Arya said, producing the weathered toy, ribbons limp. "Belonged to some child the Storm Bride once was. Somewhere a girl lost her way. She glanced east where sea met sky. Others may yet. I walk until paths are safe." Sansa drew her close. "Remember porch light stays lit." Arya slipped wolfring back onto finger. "I always remember home." She kissed Sansa's cheek, descended stairs to courtyard where Wind, her lean courser, awaited saddled. Jon watched by stable, silent approval in his gaze. She vaulted into saddle, wheeled toward open gate, felt pulse of road under hooves. The world was wide, filled with foxes and wolves, fire and snow. She rode into dawn, no banner but the promise of her own heart, and the wind whispered her name across the waking fields. Arya, 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 forever moving, forever Stark. The eastern sky glimmered pale apricot as Arya crested the rise above the Netherfield Downs. Reins loose in her gloved fist and wind's breath steaming in rhythmic bursts that mingled with her own. Ahead, the King's Road dipped toward the Greenfork Valley, its frost-clad hedgerows already aflutter with larks chasing thaw-plump gnats. 3 days of hard riding had carried her beyond the quiet watchposts of the north and the last feasting hall where her name warranted basin-warm water and a corner pallet. South of here no one recognized the tight-lipped girl in plain wool or the pinched wolf sigil she wore hidden on her inner jerkin. The world rolled on, indifferent and wide, and Arya relished the anonymity like fresh snow under a predator's paws. She let wind set an easy canter, mind turning once more over the Storm Bride's final riddle. A fox crowns a dragon of glass. She had replayed each syllable, tried it in Lysine, in Low Valyrian, in the Braavosi thieves' cant that bent consonants like rusted nails. No tongue yielded simple sense. A dragon of glass might be some wildfire metaphor or a ship of Myrish lenscraft. But crowns implied kingdoms, loyalties, soft necks. And foxes sly, enchanting, quick to vanish. Across the narrow sea, dozens of minor kings and queens of the disputed lands fancied themselves foxes. Yet her instincts tugged farther east, to the markets of Pentos where warlocks whispered, to Volantis where the Red Temple brewed prophecies like mulled wine, even to distant Karth where glass flowers bloomed on palace spires. For now she needed new eyes, new ears. She angled southeast, leaving the crowded King's Road for an old Valyrian post track that hugs the river to Maidenpool. Every half-mile, milestones peeked through snow, carved with sigils long worn smooth in ghosts of empire. By sundown she reached a mossy toll arch where 2 dull-eyed guards waved her past, uninterested in a lone traveler with no visible silver. She spent the night in the ruin of an apple press, wind stabled between crumbling casks, and dreamed of Nymeria leading an endless tide of wolves down a shore of black glass. When she woke before dawn, the crescent moon hung veiled behind gauze-thin clouds, like a coin half spent. Near mid-morning she spotted the first green glint banner since leaving White Harbor. A scrap of silk nailed to a birch trunk, silver fox rampant on bottle glass field. Beneath it lay a cairn of stones, freshly stacked. She dismounted, nudged stones aside with her boot. A headless squirrel impaled on a shard of what looked like broken emerald glass lay rotting. Black flies rose in lazy swirls from its bloated belly. Mark of warning or ownership, it mattered little. She scattered the cairn, pocketed the glass, and set the banner ablaze with a twist of tinder and wild cotton. Foxes lost tails one thread at a time. That evening she reached Maidenpool's outer crofts, expecting moot unsentries to hail her. Instead, charred timbers greeted her nose long before the ruined watch beacons came into view. The godwood sat smoking, the eastern ramp slipped under a crust of ash. She pressed wind to a gallop, vaulted a ditch, and reined in before the skeletal gate. Bodies swung above, 3 sailors, 2 townsmen, each pinned with tokens of glass pierced through cheeks or palms. Below them chalk letters upon the gate read, "The Storm Bride sleeps never." Mutton's Seat, the ancient Dun fort, still held. Arya saw archers pacing the parapets and battered banners fluttering stallion over White Tower, yet the town proper had been sacked in a midnight raid 2 nights past. Lord William himself met Arya inside the courtyard, cloak singed, left arm bound in a sling stiff with dried blood. His eyes went wide at her arrival, both relief and shame reflected in the hearthlight. "Lady Arya," he began, voice hoarse, "they struck after we dispatched ravens. Half the glass guard perished at Salt Pans turned out to be bait. The Storm Bride's captain sailed upriver under trade flags. We never saw till the gates were afire. They took barley, a wagon of children bound for servitude," and his voice cracked. "And what?" Arya stepped closer. "The coffer," he whispered, gaze dropping to the courtyard cobbles. "7 curse me, they stole the lead chest. The wildfire orb you entrusted." Arya's stomach tightened, but her tone remained even. "Was the seal broken?" I cannot say. They forced the quartermaster to open it under pain of gutting. He swears the orb lay untouched when they left. Untouched perhaps, yet back in Fox talons." She closed her eyes, letting anger flicker and extinguish. "Where did they go?" Witnesses claimed they rode south along the dusk road with the village hostages. A runner chased but found only hoof troughs at the Candleford Ford where the river splits. From there they might strike the Kingswood or vanish into Blackwater Rush. Arya glanced skyward. Dusk was thickening. "I'll ride within the hour." "Alone?" Mu Tun protested. "Wait a day, my best riders mend wounds, join you. A day might bring a pyre." She laid a hand on his bandaged arm, gentle but firm. "Guard your folk. I'll return with what was lost or with proof of fox heads on stakes." She accepted food stores, salted hare, a heel of cheese, a flask of strong maiden dream liquor, and fresh mounts, a rangy mare named Cinnabar. Under starlight she rode west along the dusk road, hooves drumming a constant rhythm like a heartbeat that would not calm. Snow flurries danced in the beam of lanterns she kept hooded. By dawn she reached the Candleford Ford, found ashes of a campfire, orange peel still aromatic, and wagon ruts leading southwest. She swallowed a bite of jerky, let wind sniff the tracks, then pressed on. The trail wound through winter-parched willows and scrub cedar until, at midday, she heard bells, thin, cheerful, out of place. She dismounted, led Cinnabar through a screen of hawthorn, and beheld a traveling carnival encamped in a dell, 3 broad wagons painted in garish stripes, a collapsible stage, a caged bear asleep under canvas. Colorful pennants fluttered, yet no crowd gathered, only a handful of rough-clad men lounged by a brazier. Carnivals seldom traveled wartime roads, and none on this track in winter. Arya approached leading her horse by the bridle, adopting a meek traveler's stoop. One guard, thick-necked, spat. "Coin for the show, girl?" "Looking for my brother," she said, allowing small tremor in voice. "He left with a glass cellar." "Blue wagon." Thickneck scratched at greasy beard. "No brothers here." A second man, thin, eyes darting, studied her, then sniffed. "She lies." He reached for her arm. Arya twisted, slammed elbow into his throat, drew stiletto to his belly. Thickneck lunged, she ducked, flicked blade across hamstring. He screamed, dropping axe. A third guard spun from behind wagon canvas. She flung a throwing needle, pinning his sleeve to wood, then vaulted, drove boots into his chest. He collapsed windless. Within heartbeats 3 lay groaning. She hauled thin one upright, pressed edge to his cheek. "Where's the green glass fox?" His lips trembled. "Inside. They booked the wagons for the night. Said we'd earn coin and pentos if we kept mouths shut." "Keys," she hissed. He fumbled a ring free. Arya bound wounded men with pennant cords, gagged them, and slipped between canvas flaps into the largest wagon. Inside, sweet incense masked faint acrid undercurrent, wildfire fumes. Lanterns of colored glass cast eerie patterns. A row of children lay huddled under blankets in the rear, wrists tied, eyes wide. 2 women in fox-masked helms poured wine into silver goblets for a third figure, unmasked, alabaster-haired, her eyes luminous hazel. Not the Storm Bride, but kin? The woman turned, studying Arya with delicate disdain. "You are no performer," she said in thick bravosity. "No, but I steal the stage." Arya pivoted sideways, sweeping lantern from hook, glass shattered, oil ignited across cab floor. Flames leapt. She cut children's bonds while fox helms scrambled. The alabaster woman attempted to wrench a crate lid. Arya kicked her wrist, crack. Woman shrieked, drew stiletto with other hand. Arya parried, struck pommel to temple. Woman slumped. Fire spread. Arya guided children to door, shouted for them to run north to the road. She yanked open crate, wildfire orb glowed faintly within lead lining. She doused leftover blankets in spilled wine, wrapped orb cradled close. Heat licked her heels. She leapt from Wa. Gone as flames roared up silk drapes. Outside, more foxguards rushed, but carnival wagons flared like torches, backlighting silhouettes. A sudden whoosh signaled wildfire vapor catching. A green blast sheared wagon roof. Guards scattered. Arya hurled herself atop cinnabar, orb wrapped, and drove spurs. She did not slow until moonwax shimmered high, far beyond flickering glow behind. The children rode double on 2 stolen ponies she had loosed. She shepherded them to a gods-fearing miller's cottage before dawn, left them food, and pressed on alone toward the Blackwater, where rumor claimed a green-sailed galley awaited its mistress. 2 days of stealthy travel later, she perched on a limestone outcrop overlooking a cove south of Sow's Horn. There, moored against a greening dock, lay a sleek galley whose hull appeared to be poured from dark glass. Lantern cages cast emerald halos. Crew wore fox cloaks over brigand leather. Atop quarterdeck stood the Storm Bride, face half-masked in silver stitched with sea pearls, red hair whipped by wind. So she survived Skullsister after all, rumors of cracked mask notwithstanding. The galley's deck bustled, orbs of wildfire carried carefully below the stolen lead coffer hauled by 2 men. Arya counted about 30 crew plus the Storm Bride and her glass-eyed alchemist. She considered waiting for dark, but docks offered no vantage. She cradled the lone orb she kept, frowned at its faint glow, vinegar fumes still intact. A plan bloomed. She descended, avoided sentries, slipped into water beyond tide pools until only head above surf. Cold knifed bones, but breath remained steady. She swam under pure shadows, emerging beneath the Fox galley's starboard. A rowboat bob tethered. She hefted orb, whispered a prayer to both old gods and nameless, and wedged the glass sphere against inner planks seen near powder lockers she could glimpse through hatch slats. She scraped steel on flint stick once, sparks hissed, fuse caught, tiny ember creeping. She kicked away, grasped pier piling, hauled onto dock. Shouts rose, guards had spotted wet intruder. Arrows whistled, she darted behind bollard, sprinted along wharf. A horn blared. Then an unearthly shriek of rending iron, a mushroom of green flame punching skyward, painting wave crests emerald. The galley's hull shattered like sugar glass, shards sizzling into foam. Crew hurled into sea, cloaks aflame. The Storm Bride staggered, mask glowing molten, and tumbled over rail. Arya skidded to halt, chest heaving. Fireballs blossomed from hold as remaining orbs cooked. Roar deafened gulls mid-cry. Smoke towered. Flaming debris rained across wharf. A wave of heat shoved her back. But the fox survives flame, she remembered story. Sure enough, a figure, hair aflame, grasped an oar that floated amid char. The Storm Bride dragged herself onto blackened planks, clothes steaming. Arya advanced, drawing needle. Embers danced around them like hellflies. "You?" the Storm Bride rasped, voice ragged, mask half-fused to cheek. "Always the wolf." Arya said nothing, only slid into stance. "Kill me." Blood leaked from scalp. But others already sail. Glass dragons breed in shadow. Arya flicked eyes to burning wreck. "Not yours." Needle's point hovered at throat. The Storm Bride laughed, lips cracking. "Mine? There are 9 brides of storm and shadow. I was but the second." She coughed crimson. "We kiss chaos across the world." Her eyes burned with feverish conviction. "When ashes settle, a dragon of glass will crown the fox eternal." Arya thrust. Steel sank inches. The Storm Bride's breath hitched, then stilled. Arya wiped blade on charcloth, searched charred corpse. No papers, only signet of fox biting its own tail. She pocketed ring. Behind her, sinking hull groaned once more, swallowed by boiling surf. She turned away, leaving fire to see. The next weeks blurred in ride, raven, debrief. She delivered proof to Mutun, to Winterfell, to the Citadel. Maesters scoured ledgers, traced names, discovering 8 coded correspondences titled wedding gifts, each addressed from a different sister: Vixen, Arctic, Desert, Stone, Fire, River, Dawn. All cryptic, all promising alliances with glass dragons. Lords muttered of secret forges, Valyrian glassworks, Carthian pyromancy. Jon summoned her by raven to the wall where he now served as warden of the realms. When she arrived, black-clad rangers sparred in the yard, snow gusted sideways. Jon greeted her atop the wall, ice winds flapping his cloak. Wildfire at sea, he mused, eyes narrowed. Glass dragons? Could be Myrish war galleys plated in obsidian. Or something worse, Arya said. She told him of 9 brides of storm, of vows bound in wildfire. Jon rested gloved hand on parapet. The realm is tired of war, but war is not tired of the realm. He looked at her, half-smile creasing. And you, little sister, are you tired? Of sitting still, yes. He laughed softly. I thought so. Sansa writes that counselors debate building royal spy service, seek someone who walks unseen. Arya gazed north where sky blended ice and cloud. Spies wear masks. I have many. She turned earnest eyes to him. But this hunt feels larger than crowns. 9 fox brides means 8 more pyres. I can find them while they still believe their secret. Jon's smile faded to solemn knowing. You want my blessing. I want your trust. And passage east bravos first. The coin still weighs heavy. He clasped her forearm. Then go with the knight's blessing and the north's. Send word when the foxes yelp. Spring's first thaw saw Arya aboard a Bravosi cog named Sea Mummer, wind-stabled below a cabin of cedar and tar her traveling world. Salt spray licked rails as sails bellied with brisk offshore wind. She leaned by prow, flipping the faceless coin over knuckles, thinking of Jaqen's half-smile, of black-white doors, of walls lined with faces waiting to sleep. Night fell, lanterns swayed, stars bled silver across restless water. Somewhere beyond horizon lay bravos, then pentos, then the puzzle of glass dragons. Somewhere beyond that, maybe peace, though she doubted it. Wolves were not meant to nap through distant thunder. They paced, they sniffed the wind, they chased whatever shapes prowled beyond the tree-line. Arya tucked coin away, let the breeze tangle her hair, and whispered a promise to waves and gods alike, not until the last fox is silent. The ship plunged onward, a dark arrow across darker sea, and the world, forever broadening, waited for her sure steps to reach its next, hidden door.